Hi, I'm Sonny Tansman, Phil's sister. I want to tell you something about Phil's early life. There may be a few interesting things about him you didn't know. Phil was born in El Paso, Texas in 1940, just across the border from New Mexico Army Base where our father, Dr. Jacob Ochs, was then stationed. After the war, we moved to Far Rockaway, then to Western New York, to the town of Perrysburg, and then to Columbus, Ohio. Phil began learning music during his freshman year in high school in Columbus. He studied clarinet and saxophone. He used to love the line Bob Christgau once wrote about him, quote, that his guitar playing wouldn't suffer much were his right hand webbed, unquote. But I'm telling you, he really was good on the clarinet. Believe it or not, Phil spent the next 3 high school years at the Staunton Military Academy at Staunton, Virginia. Why? It was something he wanted to do. God only knows why. He picked the school himself from among the ads in the back of the New York Times Sunday magazine section. His fellow students included John Dean III and Barry Goldwater, Jr. He once said later, "I had no idea what I was going to be. I wasn't political. I wasn't musical. I was just an American nebbish, completely captivated by movies, the whole James Dean, Marlon Brando trip. I was into country and Western music. There was Webb Pierce, Ray Price, Johnny Cash, Farron Young, and then I really fell for the Elvis image." As you all know, Phil's politics changed, but not his fascination for our cultural heroes, John Wayne, Bruce Lee, Audie Murphy, Bob Dylan. Anyone who seemed larger than life and very good at what they did. Phil had some cultural hero fantasies of his own. Specifically, when he was 16, he wanted to become the fastest gun in Ohio. So he got himself a gun and practiced his quick draw with a high school buddy. This lasted until he shot himself in the leg because he shot before he finished the draw. Phil began writing while at Staunton, and he won a $100 prize for a short story submitted to the school paper. He decided to become a serious writer a few years later in a classic manner, while in jail. During a visit to Florida in 1960, he spent 15 days in jail for vagrancy. After that, when he went back to Ohio State University in the fall, he took up journalism. He then began writing songs. In fact, he won his first guitar from his college roommate, Jim Glover, by betting on John Kennedy in the presidential election. Jim, by the way, taught Phil chords and techniques. Phil wrote his first song at the end of his junior year, After the Bay of Pigs. That was the ballad of the Cuban invasion. For the next 3 years, he wrote about such things as freedom rides, the steel price rise crisis, the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Civil Rights March on Washington, and the Kennedy assassination. Meanwhile, he started a mimeograph newspaper in his dormitory, and he wrote for Campus Humor magazine. He was also an editor of the Ohio State newspaper, The Lantern. Guess what happened? With Phil doing the writing, both the dormitory paper and The Lantern got censored by the school. So he quit school to become a full-time songwriter. Later he said, "Songwriting has been my major thought, with the question of how far a song can go, how much it can cover, and how to work with the song form." Phil gravitated to New York after Ohio State. For a while, he lived with Jim Glover and Jean Ray. Then he met Alice Skinner and started going around with her. Phil and Alice got married early in 1963, and their daughter Megan was born later that year. Their apartment on Bleecker Street became a hangout for a lot of soon-to-be famous songwriters who usually would come over late at night to sing their latest. To me, this was the happiest and most exciting part of Phil's life, and very much the most productive.